welcome to this 10th 2021 UK lockdown number 3 mini series, which I think is the 73rd episode in the whole Madaxeman podcast empire, coming out to you, in which the whole team obviously return, but we're all very much distracted by the imminent announcement of ADLG 4 coming out in the next few weeks, and we do have a chat about that. There's still the usual painting chat and basing chat and gluing chat in all sorts of different scales, from 28mm down to 6 this time, and also another episode of I'm Sorry I Think You're an Arse, in which we ring the praises of the fabulous Humbrol paint tin. Andy's quiz returns as well, and then we give you a tee up for next week. It's more of the same. Enjoy the podcast.
This means war.
Well, welcome. This must be 73 in our epic series, and more importantly, number 10 of lockdown. Is this lockdown 3.0 or 2.0? I've kind of lost track. 3.0.
Yeah.
So this is our kind of third mini series, gets into double figures in the UK, although things are looking up and the sun's shining, and we're all starting to smell being optimistic as well. The full team are here in their various corners of the screen, really, with their various different real or imagined or fantasy backgrounds as well. And without further ado, we're going to go straight into the what have you been doing this week? And the man who is clipping sprues and waving dangerous pointed implements as we want.
My mate Stanley.
Your mate Stanley. Adam Matilda, what are you making as we speak?
Well, I am those French late 15th century knights. I am getting around to sticking together, which is all good, because special announcement, Dacian army is now completely done, dusted, lock, stock, and lock. Okay, they're all boxed. So I'm really pleased with that. The last matte varnish, the last putting the magnet things on the base, so that's good. The ships I was starting to prep, I've now got white undercoated, so they're ready to go. So I'm starting to look at these 1480s French knights from Perry, which is good. And in other news, I'm probably going to change my painting technique for them.
Really?
Wow. I was thinking.
Well, you're going to use a brush this time instead of a roller.
I was thinking, let's just keep getting through. But these knights, especially at first, I was thinking spray them gunmetal, maybe a highlight of silver. But I mean, spraying them black and then just dry brushing gunmetal doesn't take that much longer. And the other thing I was thinking was outside where the steel is, there's some colour going on. I'm going to do the harnesses quite colourful. I'm going to do the lances vaguely colourful. So to make colours pop, I was thinking of black lining is always useful. So
you know what really helped make the colours pop?
What's that?
Spray gold to start off with. Works them. Blends it up nicely.
He got that one in. Well done. We didn't even see that one coming. We'd almost forgotten that one. We'd almost forgotten it.
Oh, I was thinking there's not Tamden talking, so it's going to be nonsense. And I was right.
But it's relevant for your paint detail.
So I'm going with.
You don't just want to push the egg.
I'm going undercoating with black, so there'll be black lining on the colours, so that'll be nice. And that's a technique that I can do for the whole of the army, so it's going to look quite coherent, because a lot of them I couldn't spray coat. Like the Swiss, for instance, I wouldn't spray coat gunmetal anyhow. Which the downside is, as a technique, it takes so much longer than just the white undercut, sort of like base army painted slop. But then I was thinking, well, I've got 4 bases of knights, which is 12 cavalry, which is 24 bits if you count cavalry as 2. And that's 60 points. Now, when I was doing a Dacian, 60 points was about 48 figures. So I'm going to be painting an awful lot less, so I can probably afford to spend time on them. So I'm going to go back to a more respectable figure painting technique.
Do you always, because I think I'm trying to think of some of the armies I've got. There are some where I've mixed and matched doing black undercoat and white undercoat in the same army for different troop types. And I think those Perry Knights, that to me, that is a bit of a no-brainer about a black undercoat. But but then again, I think all my other Peri plastic stuff is black undercoat, and you can still slot the army painter on, and it gives them a real mucky, drag through the hedge backwards European warfare sort of thing.
Yeah, I know, but then, and again, it's like when you start morphing figures and using them in that army to do that, you're kind of getting that anyhow. But when I'm designing an army, I want it to look coherent, and I want the painting style to look coherent. And the Swiss, they should be fairly colourful as well if I'm going to do canton colours. So that's a chance to sort of like have it canton. And of course, we all know in reality that they would have been covered in shit and being really nucky and wearing rags, and it's all unrealistic. But we're playing toy soldiers, so we all paint them in a way that we know they weren't really, but it looks better, and it does give that coherency because an army can look very disjointed, and you can see it on the tables when you walk around tables and competitions. You can see some people that have got sort of like loads of different stuff from anywhere just to sort of fit an army together, and it doesn't look like an army. It looks like, oh, you've not tried very hard there, have you, mate? So,
Dave, I'm just trying to
guilty as charged.
Just trying to bring Dave in here because you do black undercoat and then a very heavy dry brush of white to get the colours up on a black undercoat in some ways. So I guess a very heavy, which I've copied from you sometimes. So that can give you a lot more, pseudo white undercoat effect, and it's it's not difficult to do because it's just a messy dry brush. Really, is that fair to say, Dave? Or
well, for knights, I definitely undercoat black and then dry brush grey and then highlight tiny bit of silver to bring them up, make them pop up. And I think that really works well with helmets and mail on horses and things like that. But with other and horses, I really do now favour undercoating black. And what I do with the horse is undercoat black and then get a grey and then dry brush grey, so you can pick out the patterns on the horse itself. You get the mane
under the stuff,
tail. You can see the mane and the tail because things, and you can see the detail of the figure which you're going to paint over with, and it gives you something a basis. But also, if you undercoat the horses black, you can have that thing of the legs are black, and it means the coat d'arms. I think we all love the coat d'arms horse colours, and it means I think it helps the chestnut and the bay and those ones having the undercoat in black. It makes it that they seem to work.
Oh, I think some of the coat d'armors, or if you're speaking Cockney, coat d'arms paint. I think it does help the darker ones, but I think, and again, I think we've had this conversation before, and I'm still not sure whether I prefer black or white undercoat. I'm going to do black this time round because I think the lighter ones, it really doesn't help, and it takes quite a few coats to build up a colour. But here's another question for you that people might have, because most of the knights are just white harness, which I prefer because it's sort of like, it's a look I like for me knights, you know what I mean? It's just business, none of this showy nonsense. It's just like we're here to do the business. But 3 of the figures, and it's one of the downsides, I suppose, of buying a box of 12, 3 of the figures come with a tabard, which at first I thought, oh, a tabard, we could paint them as a dinner lady. But the other thing I was thinking was I'm going to have to do something with them, and I can do some basic patterns. One, I can do sort of like, I'll do red with a white cross because that's very Frenchy. But does anyone know anywhere where I can get 25mm transfers for sort of like medieval heraldry stuff like fleur-de-lis and etc.?
Yeah, is it battle flag? Because I've got some that are crosses and things like that, but
Veni Vidi Vici.
Well, they're the monochrome ones as the water slide, but there are some LBMS style ones. I'm not even sure if LBMS might do a set with crosses and things like that, but because I've got some, but I struggled to put them on the more kind of uneven surfaces.
Yeah, that's why I think I prefer the monochrome
water slide.
Because then if I'm doing fleur-de-lis, I can just sort of cut them out and put them on where I want as opposed to coverage. Or
I think it might be battle flag. I think it might be battle flag that have got a range of water slide because they do. I'm pretty sure they do almost full ones for the cloth barded Fireforge Knights or something like that as well. But I think they do a range of
Battlefront
fleur-de-lis and things. I think it's called battle flag. Yeah,
Battle Flag. Oh, Battlefront of the Flames War people, aren't they?
Yeah, Battlefront of the Flames War people. Yeah.
Okay.
But otherwise, I could always have a bash at if you find some designs actually making some for you, because I do need to do another print run of some stickers for something.
Fleur-de-lis must be easy to find on the interwebs.
Yeah, they must be easy to find on the interwebs and do that.
And a lot line rampant. Oh, and the other realisation that I come to in the past week, and it might be an important one, is I've sort of like last few weeks I've slowed down on my painting because of general life, and because sometimes it's like I enjoy painting, and sometimes I just think, I can't be asked. And the realisation I came to is that's okay, because I remember sort of like saying, if you want to do lots of painting, telling people that you're going to do it. And I said doing this podcast helped my painting enormously, because it did, because I needed something to say every week. But it's like also just not painting sometimes because you don't fancy it is an allowable thing. So my painting slowed down, and that's kind of okay. So I'm more chilled because I went crazy trying to get those stations done, and now I'll do the ships, I'll rig them, I'll stick these together, I'll just see how it goes, and it's all quite nice.
That sounds like we won't be coming to you for the rants this week then, but that's good to know that you're in a good mental headspace. And in terms of laid back,
having a bit of a mellow moment.
Yeah, well, in terms of mellow moment, Pete, you appear to be so laid back, you're actually sliding off the bottom of your screen there. I can only see
I try to.
The top badger of your coiffured hair. Oh no! Oh, it's come back into view now. That's quite frightening. So, what about you this week? Have you got any further with your finger gluing Vulcan?
I got annoyed with my finger gluing, and I resorted to actually venturing out into the big wide world to get some iodite, as you were suggesting, to try and stick wings on. So I managed to get hold of a pack of those on Sunday. I haven't had
two-part mixy stuff, or
the two-part mixy stuff. So I haven't had time to try and play with it yet. Work's been a bit busy, but I thought I'd resort to that so I can actually get some stuff which you will definitely not fall out. Because I was getting a bit irritated with just the normal super glue and that. It just wasn't doing the job for me.
So what's outside like at the moment then? Because I think it's before Christmas that I've seen it almost. But how did you find that?
My kids tell me about it on the way, to and from school, and I thought I'd better go and experience it myself for this year. So it was quite amusing. An amazing number of people out and about. I was like, I thought they weren't allowed out. So wandering up, especially where I live, I was like, well, what are you all doing here? You're not working.
Did you not think about sending your sub-teenage children off to buy glue for you? Did you think that was a possible strategy?
Yeah, well, the temptation was there, but I had to also get a bottle of bourbon. So, it's the sub-teenage children. It's
what shop do you
do both things.
What shop do you go to get erudite and bourbon? Or is this a new album by the geek version of Guns N' Roses?
Good bourbon.
Even ignoring the erudite, if a 14-year-old goes into a shop and says, "Going to buy some glue, mister," they're going to be asked for ID.
Never mind the bourbon. Yeah. So Waitrose is next to the Robert Dias. So it's perfect.
Right. So you actually did go into two shops. My God, two shops. That's
I know. I doubled down. That's me for March now.
No, that's done.
It's finished.
You're sorted.
Yeah.
Easter may come and go, and you'll know more excitement.
Absolutely. So I was looking at that. I also was looking at the Aztec stuff, the Aztec and Texler things, and having a look at Heresy Miniatures. They painted up some of the Gladiator ones, the Fighting 15s, and all I could think about was, damn, I wish I could paint that one.
The Heresy stuff, that's
isn't it? It's just amazing. So it's like it was painting all this sort of like the Jaguar onesies on the 15mm stuff and everything else, and I was like going, I wonder if that would look good with some gold spray.
Yeah. But I think Martin from Vexilia is painting up some of those Aztec figures as we speak for Fighting 15. So we'll get to see some of his
He's a good painter as well.
Yeah,
so
he's doing some good stuff.
I look forward to seeing some of those. But so I was contemplating some of those and have a look at it, ready for the new book that's coming out.
Yeah. Did you get any further with your plotting your Kurasan order?
No, I'm just waiting for him to put the codes on. So Dave and I had a good old plot on that, saying about how many chariots could we possibly fit in, and the basic consensus is we need to wait for the medium foot to come along, which is due to pop up this month. So by the end of the month, I think it's going to be. So I'm looking forward to that. I can afford to wait. the basic competition I'm thinking of using them is Reading. That's before 0 BC, isn't it?
I don't think Reading's been sorted yet, but there's one in the Teams thing in London that's got a before 0.
Right, thing. Yeah. I'll use it for the Teams one. Hopefully, that's August, September.
Middle of September, second half of September.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Did you actually pull the lists for that, Tim, pending version 4?
Yeah. Well, I think the lists have got TBC on the document. So as soon as we get the new version 4 list of lists, we'll be able to work out. So I think one of the periods is you have to have steppe terrain. So the armies that have steppe terrain may well change, I guess. So that will replace that list. I guess 0 BC won't change because that's pretty fixed.
Yeah. Well, the Assyrian one, I can use them at London GT. So I've got the summer to paint them. So even at my speed, I should be able to get them done in time. So I'm like holding off and do a big order. Something to get me through in April, because hopefully I can finish off all these winged hussars in March. Take a day off. So.
This means war.
All right. Well, in terms of laid back, I think we obviously need to go to the laid back, blurred background Aussie in the top left hand corner to see what Simon. What have you been up to this week in the painting stakes?
Yeah, strength, mate. It's been absolute bombs of a week, but no.
Sorry,
I thought that's one of Dave's accents for a minute. I was almost in Woola Woola Bay or wherever it is. So.
Mate. The only things I've managed to paint for the last week has been another war wagon for the Rampant Dragon rats. So I found another one of those big, crazy war wagons. So that's now that whole army completed. And I've got my first of my Alexander the Great pikeman units. I've got most of the pike painted up. So I miscounted how many figures I was meant to use rather than putting 12 or 16 onto a base. I only put 9 and sort of pike look a little bit empty on the base.
Oh, right. Okay.
You put 3 in the back rank, 3 in the middle, and 3 in the front. It looks quite empty, so I've gone back and adding a few more into it.
So how have you found those figures? Because is that the first? No, did you replace an old Alexandrian army, or is that your sort of first foray into that pure classical stuff?
This is my first time of doing one of these armies. So I've done a Roman army, but I've never done a Greek army before. And the thing is, they're not bad. There's not as much detail as I was hoping for. What I found is this is meant to be the new Z range of models. Yep. And they look nice. But when you start, especially on like the pikemen, you can see they've got the tunic and like little tassels around the hips and waist. There's not much detail there. So if you paint base coat a little bit too thick, it gets gunked up pretty quickly. So
it goes away.
Okay, at 15 mil, it's not like you're going to notice anyway at my style of painting. There's a couple of things I've noticed, but when you paint it with a bit of army painted dip and all that, at 3 foot looks perfectly fine anyway. So yeah.
No, I must admit that's interesting actually, because I myself have started because there was some quite decent weather the last week, and I managed to get quite a chunk of undercoating done. I had an order arrive from Donington with some Thracians and some other bits. I had that weird lucky eBay order come in as well, and I got a load of stuff based up on lollipop sticks and sprayed. And I've started doing, now that they're all done, I've started doing the museum Achaemenid Persians, the Sparabara and the archers and stuff like that. And I think exactly that. You can see, because I've undercoated them white, I've used Halford's car spray. So that is pretty fine. That's a pretty good finish. And then I've inked some of the armor bits and things like that to do it. And the detail is picked out on the ink, but it's kind of hard to paint. And at the same time, I'm sat here with 8 Legio Heroica, I think Luciat mace men, Arab two-handed heavy weapon men or something like that. Who've also got padded armor, and that is like nicely deep cut blocks, and the ink really goes into the base of them. It's really kind of clear how that all pads together. Whereas the the museum ones, it's all there, but you kind of sort of wish it was a bit more Zeistony and it was a bit more pronounced, and it looks kind of very pronounced on the digital sculpts, but the actual ones that are sort of shrunk down are maybe the 3D sculpts need to be more exaggerated a little bit. There's still nice figures and nice poses.
It's putting in the emphasis so you can actually see it more than a foot away.
Yeah, I think that's it. Or it picks up paint.
So it's almost like they've got to over-exaggerate it a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. So they're lovely and they're going to look good. And I'm going to do some other stuff. And then there's all sorts. I had to finish a unit for this week. So I finished a unit of 34 10mm Napoleonic Imperial Guard, which I did slightly randomly greatcoats on. They're a bit more of a mix than some of the other ones, and they're based up. That's some other stuff I've been doing. I've based up and done quite a lot of horses through just doing white undercoat, a kind of almost a slightly wash-like coat to arms, because I think that is the two ways to get the depth. You either do black and then get a proper dry brush, or you do white undercoat and do them a bit of a wash, and then do them with the ink on top of it. And I've just done a few. I did some of those test 10mm figures that we talked about last week from that Kickstarter that the guy sent to us. So I split the pack with Dave, who I handed some over to in Pitshanger Lane, a bit weird, today, and his are undercoated in black and mine are undercoated in white. So there's a bit of an experiment going on there, and they do really take ink well. They're for 10mm. They're really, I think we said last week, they're really finely sculpted, and I've just started putting an ink wash on some of them, and it's really picking out that kind of ribbed, leathery armor thing that a lot of medieval figures have. So it'll be interesting to see how much detail I can actually get onto those when the rest of them are kind of done. And it's made me think, clearly, as we said last week, I am going to resist getting an army that duplicates everything else I've got twice in 28mm and 15mm in 10. But are there any board games, or is there something around the Barons' War and that kind of era, that medieval spearmen with kite shields and things? Cry
Havoc?
Is Cry Havoc a thing?
Maker.
That was a board game in the 1980s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I remember it.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
There's a
company that did.
There's a Kickstarter for Barons' War, but it's figures.
It's figures. No, I think the Kickstarter is the 10mm.
For it. Either Footsore and whatever.
Yeah. Does Kingmaker's a classic game, but is that sort of
that's about 100 years later? That's Wars of the Roses.
Don't worry about it. I think someone's looking to do a Kickstarter to re-release that.
Okay, so I wonder if you could do that, basing up. I was thinking 3 spearmen or something like that. A couple of knights would be a nice little thing for that, which might be a cheap way of not buying them all again. But no, they're looking kind of good. But I'm now staring here at loads of Persian Sparabar and different bits and pieces, and Persian cavalry from Zeiston and some other bits and bobs to try some different painting techniques on those and get those done as part of the world of undercoating that seems to have gone on this week, and kind of crack into that a bit more, really. So that's kind of been my week in painting. Tamsin, what about you? Obviously, passing on from my superbly detailed, clever painting to yours as well. What have we got from your thing? This looks like we're finally there with the paratroops in the jungle.
Yes. Well, Friday was a nice sunny day. Lots of nice daylight. So I was finally able to sat down and finished the cleanup on the US Paras, and did that on Friday. Saturday, started gluing them onto base, and then realised I'd run out of 25mm square ones. So
is that a thing? 25mm squares? What rule set is that for?
I use
just your thing.
Chain of command. I use different. I use round bases for sort of for grunts. 25mm round bases for grunts. 25mm square bases for junior leaders. So section by squad NCOs.
Okay.
and hex bases for senior leaders, so sergeants, i.e. lieutenants, and also for specialists. I'd run out of the 25mm square one, so I've placed an order for some more bases. Then I sat down, I was looking at what I had and thinking about sort of the comparative size for US para rifle platoon against Japanese rifle platoon, and realised, I could probably use another rifle squad as support option. And so started placing an order, and of course the pack with LMGs from Artisan contains 2 LMG teams, i.e. gunner and loader ×2. And
let me guess, you need 3?
It would be rude not to actually make. I have that spare LMG team, so I ordered enough for 2 rifle squads, and then I figured actually I've got 2 60mm mortar teams, so with 2 rifle squads, 2 extra rifle squads. Actually, order some more another command pack as well. So I've got those on the way.
Right. So you got basically a full company with weapons
trays, storage.
You've ordered almost another army, really, by just to round stuff out.
I'll have enough for 2 platoons.
Yeah. Well, that's fine, isn't it?
I've got an extra pair of socks here. I need to buy a suit to go with it. Yeah.
Tamsin, if you've got enough for 2 platoons, you only need 1 more for the whole company, for God's sake.
Yeah, there is that thought.
And then the heavy weapons support platoon, but that's not very much at all. So you might as well just do the job properly, mate.
Yeah.
And then did they capture any armour at any stage as well? Might have done, mightn't they? Does anyone make a 28mm hard tank?
No, there weren't. I think there are only a couple of Japanese tanks in New Guinea, and they got abandoned.
Well, you might as well get them both.
They got abandoned at Milne Bay because they got bogged down.
These guys could have captured both of them then, surely. That's always because if we're going.
No, they arrived a bit too late for that.
Oh right, maybe they got engineered. No, okay. If that's if that's a stretch too far for someone who's just bought an accidental platoon. When they started off buying some 25mm square bases, that clearly is a step too far. I can't even convince you on that one. Okay, so does that mean
but back to the 6mm ACW. I've actually finished painting everything.
Wow, those are casualties, are they, or are they prone men?
In here, you got limber horses.
Yeah.
That's for. Are those for limber? Yeah, those for limber teams. You've got horses for dismounted cavalry.
Yep.
Some dead horses, some gabions, and some dead humans, and some cannonball stacks. So
6mm cannonball stacks. Wow.
So finished painting the human casualties today, and thought, let's just try something. I applied a wash over them and thought, that looks better. That looks better. Brings out the details a bit more. So I applied it over the whole lot.
Okay, no, that's good. And then
that looks good.
So how many layers have you done on 6mm? What, 4 layers?
So that's base coat and wash.
And
highlights.
Yeah.
No highlights.
No highlights. And for the 6mm piles of cannonballs, do you buy them from someone, or have you got like a mouse that you've got really well trained to kind of poop in a sort of apex pyramid pile?
They're from Bacchus.
They're from Bacchus. Oh, right. Okay, then they've got a well-trained mouse somewhere that can poop those out to order.
This means war.
Well, talking of well-trained mice, Dave, in your little corner of Harrow, did you manage to make it back from the weirdness that is Pitt's Hanger Lane?
I didn't. It's a very strange place, which is it's truly one of the weirdest places I've been in London for a long time. Actually,
it's kind of interstitial, isn't it? But not in a really mundane way. It's like a little place in between other places, but very mundane.
You've just used one of my favourite words, interstitial, being a.
I thought that might be. Yeah, I thought that might be.
I did. There's an interstitial bus which goes to Hanger Lane from Harrow, the 395, which is just hilarious because it goes around to all these weird council estates named after race courses, horse racing courses, which is just bizarre. Okay. You go to Haydock and blah blah blah. Anyway, no, it's good. It was a good journey. I'm just sitting here looking at these 10mm figures. They're quite cute, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they're going to be kind of interesting to give a go to. The ones I started, I'm kind of pleased at. So did you manage to? Were you finishing something off last week? No, it was the Culls and Cuffs.
Still finishing off the 17th century English guys. I'm on the second lot of cavalry. I still haven't started the Scotsman. I've got to do some drilling on the Scotsman. I've got the Dremel out to drill through things.
Well, give us a bit of Dremel. Oh, there it goes. For anyone who's not been to the dentist for a long time, Dave does freelance work now with the Dremel. And when we were having our coffee in Pitsanger Lane, you had told me that you've got a drawer of Zeiston bits as well, which sounds kind of fascinating. But
I've got drawers of. Well, I've got the Zeiston drawer.
Right. Oh God, they're in bags. They're not just like loose bits and bobs. There's proper stuff there.
A bag of Zeiston.
Oh God, there's all sorts. Wow.
And,
so is there, if it was all, is there an army's worth there, or is there more than that? Or
no, it's the odds and sods left over from Indians.
Right. But is it kind of two or three?
So in other
packets,
words, yes,
or is it just two or three
he
figures?
could make another army.
No. I mean, it's too confusing. I mean, some of the stuff is from when I began again 10 years ago.
Yeah. Wow, vintage.
Which is the Franks and the leftovers of the War and Empire stuff.
So you could do that famous Franco-Indian army then?
The early Hessians, to bring up a great DBM story of our time.
There's a Donington medieval drawer as well.
Wow. Actually, that does remind me, one of the because I had that weird eBay purchase of exactly what I needed in 6 random packs, and it had some of these Egyptian spearmen from Zeiston, those really kind of nice ones in the sort of quilted hats and things, with the big quasi-Assyrian shields. And this pack that I got that was really old from eBay have got the same shape shields, but with a different pattern in the middle and on the edge. And I was like, what? So Zeiston must have changed the shield to a slightly less ornate one at some point. But it's almost exactly the same. It's just kind of very, very odd. I'm just going to have to think whether I do that as a standalone unit or mix them all in, which is a little bit strange. But okay. So anything else that's kind of creeping in the list? Are you going to have a rummage through the drawer and see if there's anything else that you might be able to add to your eBay sales?
Got some odds and sods left over from the Spanish guys. There's a few mounted trumpet guys. Sort of,
okay. A few more nights to finish up.
The Roman ballistas. They need doing at some point because I'm going to probably need them if we go to York, if that's on.
What, to lay siege to the town or something?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
In a very small scale.
I think I'm like Pete. I was very enamoured of Mr. Heresy's website. His pictures of the Aztecs and things. And after we did the podcast, I'm now seriously considering buying Fighting 15's
Aztecs
army. But
we should that podcast got recorded last week, and if I can pull my finger out and get around to editing, it should be out in the next week or so, possibly even before this one hits the decks or shortly after, depending on how that works. So there will be a Aztecs and Families and Friends podcast out there.
Yeah, I wouldn't know what I would want to do the Aztecs with the Jaguars or anything else, or the Mayans with these sort of like the cockatoo hairdos.
Is there any reason that you'd find people with cockatoo hairdos just compelling and drawing you towards them, Pete? Or
well, it's just like it's that sort of punk era that I was too young for. You know,
Yeah.
I remember as a young kid seeing guys walk around with the mohawk and everything else. It's just like,
but didn't we?
I was too young for that, so I kind of missed it.
Accidentally almost go to a Basque. What was that?
No, that wasn't accidental. We did actually go into that punk
Basque
bar.
skate punk. It was Basque skate punk, wasn't it? That was it.
At some like 3 a.m. Yes.
Yeah.
What happens in the hotel afterwards, Pete?
The hotel stays in the hotel.
No, this didn't though. That was the problem.
That was,
Yes.
Or it didn't stay in the bedroom.
Sleepwalking. Yes. Sleepwalking.
Yes.
Was this your famous clothing malfunction?
Yeah, naked sleepwalking.
Naked Spanish sleepwalking. Yes. But enough of our other podcast. Probably get back to this one then. So rounding it all out then, Mr. Finkel, what how are your Macedonians going?
Very slowly. I mean, I'm just really painting a collection of these museum stuff. I've got one base of hoplites. I finished the Indians, and I'm now working my way through the cavalry and finishing off the hoplites as I go. So I'm doing them all together as a group, and I suspect we're talking about maybe 3 or 4 weeks of work before I finish them all. But I endorse what Adam said in the sense that I didn't get much chance to do much painting this week, and I decided, well, you know, there's times when you feel less enthusiastic about painting than other times, and it's not a big deal.
Yep. No, that's nice positive thinking. But you know, and maybe that's down to something that we will come on to in our next section about just, you know, whether it is down to a frustration with how paint is put together, presented and marketed, which is the subject of this week's I'm Sorry, I Think You're an Arse. Coming up next on Madaxman Radio, it's I'm Sorry, I Think You're an Arse, the antidote to informed discussion shows. At the piano this week is Scott Joplin, and your chairman is Sir Humphrey Humphreyson. Hello and welcome everybody to this week's edition of I'm Sorry, I Think You're an Arse. You join us this week from the Cosmos Concert Hall in Great Snoring, Fakenham in Norfolk. Located in the east of England, visitors can climb to the top of a nearby church spire where they'll be greeted with a view encompassing 7 different counties. On a clear day, it's sometimes even possible to catch sight of Norwich off in the distance, despite the many prominent warning signs advising against this. Well, look, welcome to this week's I'm Sorry, I Think You're an Arse. And after a stellar run from Adam, I've elbowed him out of the way this week because over the past few weeks, there's just been a building sense of irritation, particularly as we are predominantly a painting, wargaming figure painting based podcast here. And it's just looking at the collections of paints and thinking about buying extra paints, the rest of it has made me realise that it's just got completely out of bloody control, the whole world of wargaming paints, and it's just become a complete nonsense, and it needs to be stopped. Now, for those of you who are watching on the video, which is only the other 6 of you, despite my greying hair and receding hairline, you know, this is not an affectation. I am actually genuinely quite old, because, you know, my wonderful skin tone and all the rest of it may make that deceptive. But when I was growing up as a starting off modelling and wargaming and doing all that sort of stuff, painting was easy because there was Humbrol and Airfix, and they were basically the same range but with a different hat on, and that was kind of it. And Humbrol had a range of 170 paints in one size. They were 14mm tinlets, they were all enamels, and the little metal tins were perfect, really. Those 170 paints, that was all you really needed. They all fitted together, you could stack them up. You didn't have to send off to the internet didn't exist. You just went to your local art shop. Now, the bloke behind the counter in the art shop had no idea why this stuff sold, but there was a steady stream of 12-year-old boys coming in, buying Airfix kits at the shop next door, then going into the art shop and buying Humbrol paints. And that kept the stand coming over, and they'd slide down, you'd lift one out, and they'd slide down the rack with a little clink. And it was just perfection, really. And, you know, that rack that you still see with all of the Humbrol paints, I'm sure you'll remember it. Every single one, they'd always have run out of matte black. They'd always have run out of that US tank colour. And they always had far too many pots of glossy pink. But other than that, and then there's always one paint that was in the wrong rack that you were always looking for, and sometimes you could find. But that was just perfect. And that carried on for decades. And what great paints they really were. You know, once you managed to prise open a tin by you know, breaking a knife that you borrowed from the kitchen drawer, then you had to hit them with a hammer to reseal them. But when they were resealed, the bastards stayed sealed, didn't they? There was none of this kind of drying out or whatever. They just stayed sealed. They've recovered pots of Humbrol paint from ancient Roman wrecks in the Mediterranean, and they've been opened up, and voila, they can still be used to this day to paint the
only problem was
to paint the upper
paint,
surfaces.
if you've got it all over your
fighter.
hands, you wouldn't be able to shift it for 2 weeks.
What, you know, why was that a problem? It just taught you discipline, taught you painting discipline. So, and the way you used them was
cost me a sofa.
Well, you know, many things that handy, but that's another part for our other podcast. But, you know, you stuck kind of something in them and you really stirred them up. And basically when you couldn't see the watery, gloopy stuff anymore, and it was just one color, you knew they were pretty much ready to go. And then you'd still dip into the bottom at the bit to get the proper paint. And so you knew when they were ready. They lasted forever. They were fantastic. And they kind of, most of them never, ever ran out because you were never using that much of it, apart from those 3 colors that always ran out. And even if you did run out, you know, you could use them as slingshot bullets in reenactment. So it was all fantastic. But nowadays, the world of Tinlet, the perfect paint carrying, you know, device, is completely gone. And you've got bottles, dropper bottles, coat to arms bottles, someone else's bottles. You've got sprays, you've got airbrush sprays, you've got the GW bloody plastic nonsense pot with the spring back death trap, I will flick paint on your shirt and over your shoulder into the room thing. But who on earth designed that? That is designed basically to fall over so that, you know, people sell things to hold those paints and stop them falling over. And you're going, why are they not even making them in a way which cannot be designed to fall over? And then squeezy little bottles with kind of comedy toy nipples on the top of them. What the hell is that all about? How do you tell if they're empty? You know, and what is the point of paint pots that look exactly the same from the top? So when you're looking at them all in a row, they're just a row of white lids. And what's the point? Why don't they have the bloody colours on the top like the good old Humbrol days? Because that was a very simple system that worked. It worked perfectly. There was nothing wrong with it. And no, so now we've all got this mad collection of different bottles and different paints. Do they fit on the same shelf? No. Can you stack them up? No. Utter nonsense. Back in the day, which I think we should really, you know, all be looking to return to, it was just one pot of Humbrol, and Humbrol was it, and that was it. Now, today, if you go on the internet and type in War Games paint, you've got new Citadel, old Citadel, Vallejo game color, Vallejo model color, Vallejo model air, Vallejo mecha color, Vallejo Panzer races, Vallejo the shifters. And I'm doing an inverted commas with my fingers for that. The shifters. What the fuck is the shifters? It's a brand of paint. You've got Army Painter.
Banned in the 70s.
Battlefront, Instar, Rackham, Reaper, Privateer, Scale 75 scale color, MiG, Plastic Colger, Tamiya, Formula 3, Formula P3, just Model Mates. Model Mates, what a stupid name. If you've got all of these bloody paints, there's no room in your house for your mates to come around if you bought all this shite. And that's just the paints. And then you get all these brands have got pigments, washes, primers, contrast paints, dry brush paints. People make dry brush paints. Isn't that like paints that you dry out the brush? That's just kind of what dry brushing is. Layer paints, intensity. There's ink-tensity. I think that's another posh bollocks word for a wash. Technical paints, and that's a bollocks word for, that'll be another £2.50, please, you mug. There's just, it's just utter nonsense. And but with all these different paints, it's not like anybody's invented any more bloody colours, is it? Most of us wargamers, we rarely glimpse daylight. Peter, you know, you've only been out of the house once since Christmas, and we're all jealous because that's really pushing the envelope. And so what are these things in daylight? We've not got a clue. back in the day, the Humbrol range had flesh, and that was flesh. Bronze green was the colour that all tanks were painted. There was a colour for wood that you painted all wood for. And then they had basic names like gloss red and matte olive green and light aircraft grey. So if you wanted to paint an aircraft light grey, you walked into your art shop and said, "Can I have some light aircraft grey, please?" And they went, "Here's your light aircraft grey. Your aircraft will now be light grey." Bosh. That was it. The wildest, craziest thing Humbrol ever did, and I'm sure somebody in their marketing department got sacked for this, was midnight blue. That was as racy as it ever got.
I liked midnight blue.
What a colour. What a great colour. And we all know it as well. We all know what that was. And we can all go, "Oh, Humbrol midnight blue. Yeah, that was a good one." Even nearly 30 years from now, from when this happened, it's all there. But but now, not only are all these different ranges with the different bottles and the different droppers and the different consistencies, they're just creating more colours than there are in the spectrum and coming up with an arms race of who can create the most stupid and nonsense name for their paints. And I think, I could do another 20 minutes on just that, but I thought this is the time we need to introduce a segment. We need to introduce a game, and I've got a game that I'm going to ask. Let's have a look around. So Tamsin, you are the expert, so you are the person who needs to be playing this. Peter, you only understand the concept of gold paint, so I think you as well.
Brilliant.
And then Adam,
it's all metallic.
And then Adam, join in, because it's a shame to miss you out of this ranty section as well. So I think what we're going to do now is I'm going to take you through a quick game of paint pot or piss right off. And the choice is I'm going to read out a list of paint names, and you've got to tell me whether that is a genuine wargaming paint pot colour, or if you think I've made it up and I should just piss right off.
We're going to do it go around, get answers from each of us.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to read out, we've got 12 names, and I'm going to go to each of you in turn, Tamsin, Peter, Adam, and I want to hear you either that's a paint pot or piss right off. So if we can wade into our first ever, probably only ever attempt at paint pot or piss right off. Starting with you, Tamsin. Blue Horror, is that a paint pot or is that piss right off?
I think that is a paint pot.
Pete?
Piss off. Can't have blue as a horror. That's red,
Adam?
isn't it?
Piss right off.
Piss off. Right, okay. Green tail light or tail light green.
Ooh.
Not wing light, not left, right, not front light. Tail light green. Does someone make a specific paint for a tail light green? I'm going to have to hurry you here.
No, piss right off.
Piss right off. Pete?
Piss right off. Tail lights aren't green.
Adam?
Yeah, jog on, mate.
Piss off. Okay, Tamsin, coming to you. Flash gets gold. Teed up for Peter nicely, this one.
Flash gets gold.
Flash gets gold. FGG to its friends.
Paint pot.
Do you think that's a paint pot? Pete?
If it doesn't exist, I want it to be invented.
You want it. You're saying it's a paint pot.
It should be one. If it isn't.
Should be.
Yeah, I'll go paint pot for that one.
Paint pot. Going artistic now. Wargaming colour, savage ground. Not just ground, not earth. Savage ground. Tamsin?
Knowing some of the paint manufacturers, that's a paint pot.
That's a paint pot. Pete?
Savage ground.
Savage ground.
That's the 70s heavy metal band. That's
piss
piss
right
off on that one. Yeah.
Adam? Savage
They're
ground.
not mutually exclusive, so I'm going to go with paint pot.
Paint pot. Emperor's Children. Emperor's Children.
But the book, isn't it?
Piss right off.
That's a Chinese restaurant down in Soho, isn't it?
That sounds like fun. Emperor's Children. That sounds like it would be one of the select Warhammer ones. Yeah, that's a paint pot.
Adam?
Piss off, mate.
Piss off, mate. Okay, then Tamsin, next one. German tank crew Feldgrau, open brackets, number 2, close brackets.
Hold on a moment. I think I may have it.
We got an interruption from the crowd.
I'm just going through my German field greys. Hold on.
I know what range it is. Paint pot.
Paint pot. Pete.
Well, I think after Dave's interjection, I think that's a paint pot then.
Adam.
Tamsin seems confident, and with Dave going, "Oh, I'm just going through my German field greys. How many blood?" Yeah, I'll go with a paint pot.
Paint pot.
Yeah.
Okay then. Next one then, Tamsin. This is pulling up a theme from previous weeks. May recognise. How about cheeky tug purple? Is that a paint pot or piss right off?
It's right off.
Piss off. Pete. Cheeky
Name
tug
sounds
purple?
too long. That's a piss off.
Adam.
Yeah, on your bike, mate.
On your bike. Okay then. Next one. German winter tank crew uniform, white.
Paint pot.
Paint pot. I've got it.
Oh yeah, in that case, then I'll go with.
Okay, got it. Number 9. We're getting towards the end then. Mole's breath. Mole's breath. The
Mole's
breath of the mole.
Ooh. I'll go paint pot.
Paint
Nah.
pot, mole's breath.
Even if it is real, it's going to piss right off.
Piss right off. Adam.
Piss right off.
Piss right off. Tank periscope colour. Tank periscope. Ideal in 6mm or 10mm. Paint pot.
No, that's one step too far. Piss off on that.
Adam.
Yeah, I'll play the nope card.
And then
Piss off.
ultramarine ashes. Ultramarine ashes.
Ultramarine ashes. Piss off.
Yeah,
Pete?
no, piss off on that.
Adam.
Yeah, piss off.
And then finally, administrative building beige.
Isn't that what you would call it? That's
Administrative
That's a
building
government
beige.
paint.
yeah.
You're saying it's a paint pot. Pete?
I'm saying it's something that was painted the local council offices. I think it's a Dulux colour.
You say it's not wargaming. And then Adam?
Right off.
It's off. Okay. So that's a full sweep then. So
This means war. This means war.
if is somebody able to record, I'll have a quick review here and we can record the scores. So for the first one, Blue Horror, Tamsin scores 1. That is a paint. It's a Games Workshop paint called Blue Horror. The other 2 get none. So Tamsin's on 1 so far. Green Tail Light, we had a full suite of Piss Right Off, but unfortunately, it's a Vallejo Panzer Colours special for Green Tail Light. So that's a victory for the boy Porter. Flash Gets Gold. Everybody said that was a paint pot. Unfortunately, Flash Gets Yellow is the colour.
Oh,
But,
you've been doing research. That's almost cheating.
Well, you do sort of have to have the answers for this one. But I don't think the Metallics range has been released yet. So that's another sweep for me. Tamsin's still in the lead with 1. Savage Ground. So we had Adam and Tamsin saying this was a paint pot and Pete saying Piss Right Off. And Pete is right because Savage Ground is a paint colour, but it's a Pharaoh and Ball colour for posh houses. It's not a wargaming colour. So so Pete's on 1 as well then now.
You did not specify that it had to be.
I did at the end. I did at the beginning. You had to listen. You got to read the questions carefully. And you didn't know about Pharaoh and Ball, did you? Honestly, none of us do.
I've painted my porch that colour. That's why I thought it was.
I prefer Fired Earth myself.
Yes, indeed. Emperor's Children. We had 2 piss offs in the paint pot, and Pete was on the paint pot thing. And Pete is right. It's a Games Workshop colour.
210.
So 210. German Tank Feldground number 2, a full sweep. And Dave gets a bonus point for having it in his hand. So everybody gets a point for that one.
Dave's not playing, and he's still on equal points to me.
Yes, that's the way it works.
Kind of explains a lot.
It does. Cheeky Tug Purple, a full suite of Piss Right Off. Quite right. Everybody gets a point there. Winter Tank Crew uniform white, sorry.
Yeah, it's got to be true.
Technically, you probably should paint it in a kind of really, cream ivory, but yes, it is a Vallejo Panzer Aces colour. Everybody gets a point there. Mole's Breath. Tamsin had a paint pot. The other 2 had Piss Right Off. It's another Farrow and Ball special that I sneak in there. So if you want to paint your house in Mole's Breath, you can. Not quite sure which room you would paint in Mole's Breath, but you can't paint any small scale figures with it.
He's a 6.
Tank Periscope. Tamsin said it was a paint pot. The other two said piss right off. And it's a Vallejo Panzer Aces colour for Periscope. Tank Periscope colour. Tank.
I can see you using
colour.
a lot of that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it lasts for over 40 years.
I think it used to be called Periscope Grey.
No, maybe that was confused with the submarine range or something. And then Ultramarine Ashes. Everybody got that right with piss right off. It is a fired earth colour, Dave. So I'm surprised you didn't chip in with that one. There is a fired earth colour called Ultramarine Ashes, but it's not.
I'm not sure it's not the colour of my walls.
So everybody with a point there. And Administrative Building Beige. 2 piss-offs from Pete and Adam. Both score a point. Tamsin, you were close. There's Administratium Grey from Games Workshop, but not Administrative Building Beige. So, don't know. Who was recording the scores there, Dave? Was that you?
So Tamsin has 6.
6.
Adam has 5.
5.
And Pete has 5, 6, 7, 8.
Pete has 8. So Pete wins. Congratulations, Pete. You are the first winner of Paint Pot or Piss Off.
Fantastic. What do I get? Do I get Flash Get Gold made especially for me?
Yes, I think you probably do have that automatically, really. But no, I think
so. Gold, blue.
But I think the issue with all these ridiculously named colours is, no matter how bloody daft the name is, we have no idea what they genuinely look like, because we're painting stuff up that was, the manufacturing process was different, the application was different, where was sunlight, the wear and tear. They made stuff out of soot and they applied it with like cat's urine and bits of bark and twigs, and that was like in the Second World War. So nobody knows what these things look like, but we all spend forever looking for them. If you Google the phrase paint comparison Dunkelgelb, that comes up with 14,000 results. Nobody has a Scooby what these paints with stupid names are even supposed to look at.
Certainly because they can't spell it.
Napoleonic French Blue War Games on Google, those 4 words, 716,000 results. So all around the world, everybody is furiously Googling for stuff that nobody actually knows what the answer is. Nobody at all knows what the answer is. But the real things would have been painted on wood or hide, and we're seeing them in under artificial light, unless we're all fucking daft enough to buy a daylight bulb at 15 quid a pop to allow us to recreate where we are painting them, the lighting conditions of being under a daylight bulb in a dimly lit room. And then we put them on table, taking a wild stab in the dark, not under a daylight light in a different room. So whenever we put them on table to field them, they look completely different anyway. So why can we not just go back to Humbrol, 170 colours, sensible names, that's it, because all these other paint colours are utterly irrelevant, they're utterly unnecessary, and when we all started up, we were all very happy, and there just are not that many colours in the world. The tins are better with Humbrol, the names are better, there's no nonsense, and if anybody can find a use for that gloss pink paint, you could probably pick that up cheap, because there's always some spare ones. You might be able to haggle with your local art shop, and all the rest of it, just go back to Humbrol and bin all the rest of it. And that is my big theory on why modern wargaming paint is nonsense. Tell me I'm wrong.
First thing I've got to say to you there, Tim, is you were getting quite angry there at one point. I even noticed some naughty words. You were sort of like getting a bit hot up. So the first thing I would say to you, mate, is you really need to chill out, okay? You're just talking about hobby stuff on the podcast, okay?
This is life and death. This is economics.
It's almost as if, right, you've got other stuff going on in your life that you can't sort of like deal with, so it's coming out now. I don't know, maybe it goes back to your childhood. So firstly, I would say, take a breath, chill out. Second thing I would say is there were some very good things in the 70s and 80s. Humbrol paints were not one of them, okay? Now, Humbrol paints is more at the mullet and Findus crispy pancake end of the 70s and 80s rather than Chelsea boots, okay? Because, yeah, they came in tins that were impossible to open and impossible to close again. And I will give you, they actually give a beautiful colour, because Jeff, still sometimes paints his figures, and they give a beautiful colour, but they were a pain in the ass to use. I mean, really, they destroy brushes. They were just a pain. So that's all a bit rubbish. And modern paint colours, it's like, yeah, they got funky names. It's like, but we don't know what the shade is, and we don't know what the colour is. Here's a tip, Tim. What you do is this. It's like when you're buying paints, what you do is you pick the bottle up and you look at the paint inside the clear plastic bottle, and you go, oh, that's what shade it is. Okay, so you can see the paint when you buy it now. Now's not perfect. I completely agree with Games Workshop pots. I mean, what the fuck goes on with them? I've no idea why they thought that was a good idea. But overall, what you're complaining about is things used to be crap, but we didn't get a choice, so we all put up with it. Whereas now there's some good stuff and bad stuff, and we've got to like choose what we want. So overall, I think the sort of like being able to choose the good stuff is a good idea. And the only other thing I would say is you used to go to an art shop to buy a Humbrol paint. Oh, la-di-da, where did you grow up? Lincoln or somewhere? It's like
somewhere without a model shop. That's where it was. Yeah,
somewhere with not a shop. Whereas now, what you do is you go to the local war game store and you buy your paints. So overall, that's better than buying crap paints in an art store.
And Ted, you're missing the whole point. How and what would half of people talk about when you go to the competition if they're not saying about, well, which shade blue did you paint your French Napoleonics in? I mean, it's like an opening chat-up line when they come to look at the army. Oh, what shade is that? Where's that one from? You know, you're missing the whole sort of like opening segment that makes all these introverts easier to talk to because they've got a nice, easy opening line.
I think, Pete, you've got to, I would toss that back on its head. It's saying, surely when you're talking to other wargamers, the first thing in your head is, how do I shut this conversation down and get out of it as quickly as possible? And then you're saying the idea that there's a ready way to make that conversation go on for much longer that's an anathema to all of us if we think about it, surely.
But that's why people want all the variety of paints, so they can argue about whether those Polish Lancers were in that sort of green or the red or this sort of shade of it, and why have you taken the darker red when they were actually in a lighter red? And I noticed the epaulets are a slightly different blue than they should be.
I've been waiting 3 months for my deck white. I ordered it in January.
Deck white.
I actually phoned up Government Games in Manchester and said, look, I know you're really nice guys. I love you. I bought stuff from you before. But when the hell? And the guy said, yeah, it's on order and it comes in dribs and drabs, but they're just, none of these paints are getting through. But the other thing I was going to say is all these colours are designed for war gamers at shows to stand there absent-mindedly looking at the Vallejo paint drippers when they can't think of what the fuck else to buy. And they just stand there looking at these things and, comparing all the different yellows and all that.
Actually, that is the thing as well. So yellows, there are a large number of yellows, all of which you end up buying every single one of them in the hunt for a yellow that actually gives coverage. But they're all the same one.
None
that doesn't
of them
give
do.
coverage at all. Whereas
that's why I use gold.
Humbrol yellow is just cover because it was Humbrol yellow, and that was it.
Yeah, there is a problem with Humbrol, which is that it's enamel paint and that it smells, and it also, if you spill it on something, you can't get it off, and you have to wait for it to dry before painting something else. So I prefer to use acrylics. It's much easier in a flat where.
So actually, what was your broken sofa story? Does this relate to your preference here at all?
Yes, many years ago, I was painting some 6mm Confederate sitting on my sofa, and I spilled a bottle of Humbrol paint, and that was it. The sofa had a horrible red stain on it, and luckily it was one of those cheap put you up sofas because that's all we could afford at the time. But the Empress wasn't having it, and she made me buy another one.
So actually, Humbrol paint costs you a whole new sofa.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, you would hold a grudge against Humbrol for that.
Yeah, but it is smelly and eye-watering and slow to dry and all the rest.
Do you
of
think
it.
though there's part of it that you shouldn't really have been painting American Civil War Confederates in red? Because my limited knowledge of the period suggests that's not kind of necessarily part of the normal.
Well, some of them had red hats and blankets and stuff like that, you know.
Just getting some extra colour in it.
Yeah.
Periscopes is quite good.
Yeah, actually, if they'd got periscopes, you would have known what to do, wouldn't you? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's much call for periscopes on 6mm Confederates.
Going back to sort of a rant bit, the names of the paint, I blame Games Workshop.
That's a generic catch-all, though, isn't it?
For weird names, like and then they've been copied by Army Painter, Vallejo Game Color, various other ranges. And
but do you feel some sort of inner sense of shame about buying some of these ridiculous names? Is there just that embarrassment factor about going and go, I'd like a pot of Achehelian bogey or something?
That doesn't bother me
I don't
more
buy
than
those.
the 8 shades of white.
I buy Vallejo model color, which is sensible names.
Right.
Tim, I feel an inner sense of shame for painting toy soldiers at all.
Yes, that could, yeah. Well, I suppose so. It's all matters of degree, though, isn't it, really? Everything's a matter of degree and how ridiculous it could be.
I saw a name of a paint called Scrofulous Brown, and I thought that was the name of a character in the Harry Potter movies.
I think there's a whole range of Harry Potter character paints that Vallejo are bringing out. That could be it.
Mind you, it's not a paint; it's a wash. The secret weapon washes range.
That's another manufacturer I've missed.
Originally created by Les Burley. There's one. Most of them count similar. Absolutely normal names like concrete, dark concrete, weapon wash, or armor wash, or things like that.
Les Burley.
And there's one in the range called baby poop. Sort of a greenish, yellowish brown.
It does what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
Has it got the smell with it as well?
No.
I've just found Crystal Periscope Green.
There's Bristol Periscope.
Crystal Periscope Green.
Right. Is that in your own collection there, Dave, or have you just found that on the interweb?
I found it online. Some
Okay,
German, there's these MiG people I've never even heard of.
Okay. Well, look, let's wrap this up and say my theory is it's just out of control. The explosion of pots, the names, the different brands, all the rest of it. We just don't need it. We were much better back off in the 70s. 3-day week and all that kind of thing, notwithstanding, and flares and the base city rollers. But apart from all of those things, the one good thing to come out of it was simplicity and clarity and lack of bloody nonsense around the world of war games paint. So going around the screen then, starting with you, Adam, and I think I already know the answer because that's an easy one. Do you think I'm an arse?
But it's what people have been talking. I've been considering it a bit more, and it's harder than you think, right? Because on the one hand, you've got an industry that's got a lot of experience in retailing its product, market research, Game Workshop, multi-million-pound company floated on the stock market. On the other hand, you've got an opinion of a bloke who's ranting on a War Games podcast because he's got mummy issues. So it's like, it's a tough one, but I'm going to have to, on balance, come down with year and arse.
Okay. Tamsin?
You're right about the proliferation of names, but as your argument that you don't know what colour it is from the name, that's why they produce paint charts, so you can look them up and find what you want. So you're being an arse.
Okay. Peter, what about you? Do you yearn for the days of Humbrol?
No. It was a pain in the arse. You're an arse. It's just move on from it. You don't live in the past, Tim. Move forward, okay? Just because you can't pronounce the names, that's not my issue.
Okay. Andy, does your sofa get a vote here? In which case I'm in trouble?
Yes, you're in trouble. I think saying let's go back to the 70s in that respect is a damning indictment of your argument. Also, why would less choice be a good thing? So I'm afraid in this case, a lot of what you say I agree with, but you are an arson, I'm afraid.
Okay. Mr. Saunders, what about you in the bunker?
Humbrol was a disaster. It was horrible. It was awful. But I tend to agree there's too much choice. So I agree.
Okay. Simon, am I going to get a second save?
What's it worth to me?
I live somewhere probably.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. There is too much choice. When you look at it, sometimes like a red, sometimes you want just 3 or 4 reds, and you go to some of the ranges and there's like 25 different shades of red. I'm lucky if I can see 2 colors of red, bright red or flat red. Ta-da. I quite like the old Humbrol paint ranges. I only really use them in the acrylic range. I gave up using oils far too many years ago. I'm glad to never see them again. But yeah, I agree with you. Slightly less choice would be a bit helpful. Sometimes I just want a green.
Okay then. So 4-2, not a bad clawback after Adam's sweep over the last few weeks. So, but I think unfortunately that does mean the consensus is that my Humbrol based paint theory, I'm just an arse. Well, as the 88 rounder Destiny hits the Sherman tank of time, that means time's up for us on this week's episode of I'm Sorry, I Think You're an Arse. We'll be back next week. Look, with that set of theme music fading into background, we would normally go into the who's played what this week, but by the looks of it, we've had a bit of a wash on people fitting in games, partly through us changing the time of when we record this podcast and not quite leaving a big enough gap between them to fit in some online games. I think there's some more coming up in the next week or so, but this has been a week of big news in the ADLG world, really, with a surprisingly imminent, I think it must be said, release and publication date for version 4 coming out of the 19th of April. And I think we've all been in a sense of frenzied excitement through North Star announcing that it is available for pre-sale, version 4, and will be, in theory, distributed, handed out, sent out, posted around the world on the 19th of April, which is kind of tomorrow in publication deadline terms, after being kept under wraps very, very effectively, it's got to be said. I think the fact it's been kept such under wraps makes it challenging for us to even begin to speculate on. But we may well do dig into this with a separate episode at another time and just talk about this. And obviously we'll talk about it once it comes out. But just knowing what we know, there's about another 20 pages this time, but there's also about another 20 odd extra army lists as well.
It's 30 pages longer and there are 30 new army lists.
Okay, so it sounds like most of that extra content is going to be taken up by army lists then, which is good. The rules don't sound like they're getting better. But if we look at the concept of, just to do a quick run round, and this is all entire speculation or wish list, between new army lists, improved army lists, tweaks to the rules, is there one thing that you've got your fingers crossed for when that brown envelope from North Star lands on the mat and you rip it open furiously and flick through to find a new rule? I don't know, Peter, what is there a rule that you're hoping kind of gets changed, or an army list that gets added or something?
Yeah. Well, 2 things. One, Elephant Rampage. I want it to be a proper rampage, none of this 1 UD lock. I want it to go a full 2 UD and elephants become the true glass cannons that they really are, rampaging through the battlefield. That would be awesome. That would do it for me. I'd just have a whole parade of them coming charging in. If they die, fine, they're going to go into stuff. That would be fun. That would make my day. Plus, the second thing I'd want, more medium night lists. I think they're going to make some more Spanish ones, some Navarre and everything else. I can have some more medium impact nights coming storming in with a mixture of it. Throwing the odd, medium foot to mess around in the terrain, just keep people busy. But yeah, get my medium nights storming in. I'd be a happy bunny.
Okay. Let's go around. Dave, what about you? Any troop types? Your favourite Almugavars, do they need to get better? Anything else? Or
I'm quite happy to see what happens. I mean, I'm quite happy with it as it is. I mean, this is what the second set of rules I've probably learned properly. I mean, I did a bit of DBM, but you know, I mean, all I know is my copy of version 3 is completely threadbare and falling to bits. So I'm just glad we're getting a new set, which is going to be a bit more with it.
Okay. And Andy, what about you? Anything that you're?
Yeah, I'd like to see I'd like to see the compulsory terrain piece automatically end up in the defender's half of the battlefield, or at least give the defender the option to do that. Because how often do you get outdiced on the initiative and then find that you don't get any terrain to rest your army on?
Okay, so something kind of to tweak the terrain rules then to make that a bit
Yeah,
more.
give the defender the option if the compulsory piece lands in the opponent's part to re-roll it.
Okay, something like that. Adam, what about you? Anything that you're?
Overall, I think they play quite well as it is now. One thing I would say, and this might be an unpopular opinion with this group of people, is I think elephants need to be toned down a bit. I think they're too good. I think they're too powerful. When we used to do the list discussion here, every list that we did that had elephants, people tend to take them, and there was never at any point of discussion about, no, you don't want elephants in this list, they don't work. So if there's any troop type where no matter what the list, they're included, that would suggest to me they're a little bit overpowered. So I wouldn't mind seeing elephants toned down a little bit. I would also like to say, Dave, if your version 3 is falling apart, if you need a copy to see you through, I can sell you a copy for $5 if you want them.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, actually, I think there's a lot of ways that elephants could get toned down, isn't it? You could either tweak their factors, or you could make their natural opponents better. There's all sorts of different ways.
Yeah, I'm not saying that elephants have to get worse, but if they stay the same, then they need some natural predators more that you'll see on the table.
Oh, I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind them becoming more of a glass cannon, where you charge them in and there's more potential for them to die, but then they can really cause a bit of a rampage. Because I think that would just be hilarious.
That Lightfoot pin them.
Well, Simon and I once brought some furry mice to a war games competition to scare off the enemy elephants, but the rules didn't seem to give us any benefit there.
No, I doubt that's going to come in. You bringing cuddly toys along, not really going to cut it. Tamsin, anything that think you're hoping for or to see?
In terms of the rules themselves, not much that hasn't already been suggested. But I think in terms of army lists, I'd quite like to see the list for Korean, Ming Chinese, and Japanese extended a bit further, a bit later to cover the Imjin War.
Okay, all right, that's an interesting one. And Simon, what about you?
I'm happy to sort of see what changes they make. I'd like to see my some of my medium swordsman armies, just medium swordsmen, the Chaffee armies, a little bit more useful, and maybe my medium spearmen, because every time that you do bring them out on the table, they get pretty much run over within a second flat. But I'm just looking forward to seeing what they come out with, and also what new font are they going to use? 'Cause that's always a big question.
Yeah, that's true. No, I think the medium spearmen, medium swordsmen, they are the underloved troop types, aren't they? So let's all hope that there's some love for that. I guess if you think about it as unloved troop types, I guess the other bit is rear support is just a little bit meh. I think it's either over pointed or under effective for what it achieves. But how do you bump it up without what makes it how could you make it a little bit better so that it becomes worth taking? It's got some kind of drawback. So I think there's just seeing the underloved stuff being pulled up a bit would be nice, but I guess we've probably not got long to know, and maybe I say we might well do a whole more out there speculation episode, and if we get around to it, manage to fit it in sometime in the foreseeable future. So that's our speculation section.
This means war.
So having speculated about the rules, and tried to sort of see the future and have a guess. I think one thing that we can all see into the future is that we can all see coming up over the hill a deep and abiding moment of deep house French techno.
Question, comment les voir? Question, le trou est sans fond. Question, la légende le dit. Question, elle dit aussi. Question, c'est une maladie. Question.
So those are the questions. We've asked the questions about ADLG. And Andy, it's now your time to tell us what questions you asked us last week and to hit us with, I'm almost tempted to say, hopefully not another onanastically themed quiz, but it's starting to become a bit of a thing, isn't it? So, what was the subject last time?
It was hard to beat, and it was about generals who didn't lose battles.
Hard to beat, yeah. Okay, right.
The fact you've given it an alternative nuance is up to you, really. Yes, anyway, the first question was, what was the nickname of French Marshal Davout, who is reputed never to have lost a battle? Now, I know sure Tamsin knows, but how about anybody else?
Iron Marshal.
Correct.
Yeah, Iron.
Okay.
That wasn't to do with him general keeping his clothes well pressed or anything like that?
Well, you got people to do it for him. Yeah. Which Arab general, rated as a strategist in ADLG, is reputed to have fought over 100 battles and lost none of them?
Khalid.
Yep. Khalid ibn al-Walid, his name is.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the rest of it, but then it's Khalid.
Yeah.
Apparently he was about 16 or something when he won his first battle.
Really? You obviously know more about him than I do, yeah. A
lot of Mohammed's generals at the very beginning were just teenagers, allegedly.
Yeah, but did he ever open the batting?
I guess there wasn't a lot of betting involved in that sort of thing. So, batting, sorry. I thought you said betting. Yeah, that doesn't really fit either. Okay, and the third one?
Alexander the Great had a 100% success rate in his battles. How many battles did he fight?
You're including sieges?
No.
It wasn't that many, though.
11.
I was going to say 12.
It was 9, apparently.
9 set-piece battles. Okay, then.
Question, comment les voir? Question, le trou est sans fond. Question, la légende le dit. Question, elle dit aussi. Question, c'est une maladie. Question.
Le disco is past. The next week questions are coming up to us. Andy, scare us with the topic. Scare us with it.
Well, this week's topic is all about people who served in cruisers at the start of the First World War. So I've called it Carry On Cruising.
Okay, that's good. That's a good recovery, because I was thinking that's a little bit niche.
There was an alternative name which sprang to mind. I'll tell you later. You
right. Okay, then. Good.
Okay. Right. So the first one is when Lieutenant Helmut von Mucke's ship was sunk while he was leading a shore party.
Sorry, who? Helmut von Mucke.
That's his name.
You sure these aren't people from Carry On films?
Google it. True.
Right. Helmut von Muck, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mucke, right? Right. When his ship was sunk while he was leading a shore party, he led his landing party across thousands of miles of ocean in an open boat, then through a large area inhabited by hostile tribes, and eventually back to Germany via Constantinople after many months of travel. What was the name of the ship of which von Mucke had been first lieutenant?
Von Muck's ship. Okay. All right.
Okay. Question 2. Who served with 2 navies in the First World War, ended the war as a prisoner of war after his submarine was sunk, and decades later rose to be commander-in-chief of his country's navy?
I suppose you would rise if a submarine sank, but okay, another interesting one.
And the third one is Wenman Wycombe Musgrave, who later rose to the rank of commander, was on 3 British cruisers torpedoed on 22nd September 1914. What was the nickname given to this naval force?
He was on 3 cruisers which were torpedoed in the same day.
Yeah, he was sunk 3 times on the same day.
He's not Uncle Albert from Only Fools and Horses, is he? No? All right, then. That's certainly one to look up. So, yes, I think without further ado...
I imagine the crew of the Assured third ship must have been somewhat nervous when he climbed on board.
Was there a 4th?
No.
No. Well, I think that those are indeed questions.
Question, comment les voir? Question,
with Le Disco fading into Le Background, it's now time for us to wrap up this week's short, sharp, and punchy episode with a quick roundup of what is coming in the next week or so. So, Andy, what are you? I think you said you're likely to be just ploughing through the extras in your Macedonian army. Is there any particular thing that is top of the list that you're going to try and nail in the next week?
Might finish the hoplites and then the Scythians, and then try and finish off the Greek cavalry.
Okay, hoplites first.
Yeah, I mean the idea is that this is going to be these Greek cavalry I'm painting are ultimately going to be the mounted wing of a Thracian army.
Okay, and have you got a battle teed up against American Dave?
Yeah, we have. I think it's called Hanigblat. It's he found these battles. This one is apparently between the Assyrians, list 7, and the Hurry Mitanni in the year 1274 BCE, and the Assyrians have got a strategist. So I've never done this before. I've got to use an Assyrian army, and it should be interesting. I've gone for one corps of just medium infantry swordsmen, one with a couple of bowmen, one of chariots with a couple of bow guys just to support them, and then under the strategist I've got a mixed command, a couple of chariots just to hold people off, and the elite, much of the elite swordsmen, and I've got a mixed bow sword guy in each corps for a bit of shooting.
Well, I think as long as you make sure the chariots are painted in Assyrian battle chariot red or something from the Vallejo chariot aces range, I think you should be fine. I
haven't got the skills to colour them on Tabletop Simulator, so I don't know.
Okay, it's all virtual.
Anyway, there was a poem, wasn't there? The Assyrian swept down like a wolf on the fold, his cohorts all painted in purple and gold.
And that's going. I'm still going banging on about this. They weren't saying painted in, active tugging purple, were they? They just said purple and gold. It wasn't.
No, I think it was Tennyson or Byron or somebody. He didn't give us those details.
But if Byron couldn't come up with a better name for colours, and Vallejo were trying to make, well, look, I'll give it up. I'll let it rest. So
yeah, it's one of these classic poems. I can't remember exactly which one it was.
Exactly. Adam, what about you? You had any further thoughts in the last hour or so about your undercoating, dry brushing kind of malarkey?
No, just gonna stick the nights together, undercoating black. When that's done, I'm going to finish ships. Painting doesn't take too long. Doing the rigging is always an experience, and sort of bimble on really.
And then we're waiting for. By the time this comes out, hopefully Entoyment will have those tickets on sale, I think.
Oh yes. Hopefully by the time this comes out, the tickets for Entoyment should be on sale. And also a worldwide exclusive for the Madaxeman's podcast. That competition is going to be a version 4 ADLG competition. So, because it's got 3 months to get through it. So the world's premier ADLG competition in 2021 will be using version 4.
Fantastic.
Gordon's going to be umpiring.
He's probably the only one who's read it, isn't he?
Gordon and Herf. Because they like arguing about the rules together.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah, it could be something like that. Simon, what about you? Do you is work going to give you a chance to do a few more Macedonians, or are you just going to be peeling them off the bases and sticking them on in 12s?
I'm hoping I'll get enough chance this week to finish at least one base worth of pikemen. So that if I can get to that, I'll be happy this week.
Okay, that's decent. And Mr. Saunders, are you going to finish off the Battle of Ugrim?
I'm going to undercoat my Scotsman, and then they're almost complete.
Scotsmen didn't wear undercoats.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, they've got to be undercoats.
They went commando.
These ones have got trews on, actually.
Trews. They have trews.
Yeah, they have trews. And then think about a new project.
All right, think about a project. Right.
Aztec.
Mexicans.
Aztecs, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have some Aztecs with your Jaguar onesies.
Yeah, 40 quid Aztec purchase, maybe. And Tamsin, have you got a timeline for these multifaceted, different square bases and extra platoons, or are you going to just pick up the phone now and place an order to turn it into the whole battalion? No, to turn it into a whole battalion, just add a few more to it.
No, I've ordered the base, I've ordered the figures. I'm not adding any more.
Right. Okay.
So next few days, I'll be finishing off the 6mm ACW. I should have them all based, all done and based by next Monday when we record again.
Excellent. Something to look forward to.
And I might have made a start. Well, I might have got the US Paris that I have already, that I've got now primed, ready to.
And is that going to be white prime or black prime?
That'll be black prime.
Black prime for those. Okay. Well, I think I'm just staring here at a load of primed versions, and I think it's the next few days is going to be a big decision about whether I try and shoot through doing it with contrast paints and do them the silky look, or whether I try and do them slightly more technical than that, or whether I just get distracted and try and do some Ottoman cavalry.
Here's a question for you, Tim, because the contrast will probably, if they're sort of like long flowing silks, contrast will work well. But whatever technique you use, how much of a pattern are you going to put on? How much are you going to go to town on stripes or zigzags or that whole Persian-y feel of patterns?
Yeah, I think when I do patterns, they tend to be a row of spots with sometimes a different color in them and maybe a stripe, but I just sort of have a kind of go at it. I don't really have a plan, which isn't right. But one of the things I want to try doing more of is that 2 or 3 tone stripe with kind of paler at the outside and darker in the middle, or the other way around, because I think that's sort of you paint a broad stripe in one color and then you paint a different thing down the middle of it, and you end up getting 3 stripes for the price of 2 or something. So I think there's probably some ways of doing it. And I probably do want to spend a lot of time or a bit of time noodling around on the internet, trying to not necessarily find something brilliant, but find something that I go, oh, I could do that, and that would look effective. So particularly with these Sparabara, I'm planning on basing them quite densely. It's not going to be 4 and 4. It's going to be like 4 plus 1 shooting through a gap and then like 6 behind. So they're a bit of a mob because I've got a lot more bowmen than I need. And I want that kind of mob effect. So there's a point. Are you
doing that for the Sparabara and not the Immortals? You're going to make the Immortals look really regular.
Well, the other thing I thought is because they've got these, obviously these big shields, which have got different patterns on them. You could do them by dry brushing the patterns, or you could do by, inking the patterns to do on those big shields. But they're actually a nice little square thing. And because I've already done it for the war towers, I might print off some really small scale graphics of Persian and Assyrian type patterns and cut them out and stick them on, so that the shields have actually got textile type patterns, which will be better than, well, 2 things. They'll be better than anything I could paint by long chalk, and secondly,
decals.
They're almost decals, yeah, but they'll be printed off decals. So because I don't think decals will work because they're not flat, they're really textured. They've kind of got the texture that the big
spot. Sort of wicker.
Yeah, the wicker effect. But I don't. But I think if I do them with colours, they'll be different to everybody else's, and I can do in the old set I had that I've kind of retired and sold some of them. I did the Immortals in uniform, and I did the other ones in irregular colours. So that, I think between that and then between doing different shield patterns, I can get kind of a cheaty way of doing color or impact really on them. And it's just whether I get drawn into doing that or whether I get drawn into something else that I think I can get a result on kind of quickly. So yeah, that's sort of the plan. But I want to kind of get started and see where it takes me, because I'm just finding it hard to plan them all out really, which is maybe the wrong way around to do it, but I don't know. And just sort of rounding up then, Peter, you are going to glue your fingers together this week.
I am definitely gluing my fingers together, only with even stronger stuff. So if I'm not able to actually work the Zoom next week, or I'm having to do voice control commands, what's happened, and my fingers will be all bandaged up. So hopefully I can get those done and then start looking. What?
Get your butler to do it.
Well, I've got to get them time off sometime.
One of your profit centres.
Profit cost centers,
Cost
yeah.
centers.
Yeah, delegate to win.
You've got to wait 20, 30
Well,
years
you
for
get
the
them
profit
to,
centers.
Peter, if you get them to do the nasty jobs for you, that makes them a profit centre.
No, but then Tom, to remember, they're the ones to choose your retirement
to redo it.
Mm.
But yeah, and then I'm going to be looking at those Aztecs and Mayans and everything else, because I quite like the look of them. It's just, how can you win with a load of medium foot? That's my problem. So I'm looking forward to how I can work that out.
I think what you need to do is listen to a podcast
against medium foot.
Yeah, you need to listen to a podcast that hopefully might even be coming out before this one. So
you could probably sneak some winged hussars into them on the basis that they've got feathers as well.
That's true.
And
yeah,
hula skirt.
Yeah, winged hussars with feathers in their hat and a hula skirt. And I think on that note, that is definitely the note to end it this week. So thank you, everybody. By the time this comes out, we'll be a week closer to getting ADLG version 4 and all the excitement that comes with that. We'll also be a week closer to Easter. So goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Plus the fact that they're changing all the basing to 50mm squares.
I think the 50mm thing to make room for the Zeiston and museum figures, that's a good one.
This means war.